Stay free with me, Russell Brand. Now, like on our podcast, we talk a lot about mainstream media narratives. We talk a lot about duplicity and disingenuity in the way that information is relayed to us. The Nord Stream gas pipeline story has become sort of quite divisive, in part because it's an established part of American foreign policy to disrupt the relationship between Russia and Europe when it comes to the supply of energy. I wonder if you have any opinions about that matter and any speculation onto whether that sabotage, and it is established that it's sabotage, was undertaken by special forces, given your history within those services.
Well, it certainly seems like the type of operation that could be conducted by some type of special operations unit. The bigger question is which special operation unit and from what country executed the operation. And I don't know. And I look forward to the truth coming out at some point. It certainly is a curious scenario, though.
It is a curious scenario because, of course, in 2014, Condoleezza Rice said that, we should stop that pipeline. There was a RAND report that came out of America sort of saying that one of the things that they most had to do would be to disrupt that pipeline. I wonder how, as a person that's sort of been within the elite circles of special services, the mindset that requires in terms of fealty, loyalty, dedication, willingness to go into situations that other people mightn't, what kind of perspective that gives you on geopolitics, and also how it can be a challenge to patriotism. Last time we spoke, Jocko, it was established that patriotism is natural in anyone. We all feel an affinity to the tribe that we belong to, but it sometimes it raises moral and ethical questions if you subsume yourself into a larger group. If you say, I belong to this tribe, for example, United Kingdom or United States of America, and there are moral questions that are raised. How do you square the necessity for obedience, broadly speaking, in the military, although I'm sure that there's more flexibility in the sort of elite areas and in command, I would imagine. How do you square your own personal morality with what sometimes seem to be unethical actions undertaken in the service, not of a country, it sometimes seems, but in the service of the corporate interest that those nations sometimes represent? And I mean both in the case of Britain and the United States in this instance.
Well, obviously, there's a level of discipline inside the military, and this is a question that comes up on a pretty regular basis. What do you actually do if you get told to do something that's unlawful? And the answer is you don't do it. And you get taught this inside the military. One of the general orders of the century is you'll carry out all lawful orders. And so if somebody is asking you or telling you to do something that is unlawful, then you are not that you shouldn't do it, you're obliged not to execute unlawful orders. So I think that's pretty straightforward, and that's something that you're raised with in the military. And I think that's one of the things that keeps the military, in a sense, with a moral compass, in the fact that military people are citizens first. And so even when you're in the military and you're a soldier, you know that you are also a citizen. And if you're doing something that's morally or ethically or legally wrong, you don't do it.
Do you feel that people within the military are able to maintain a kind of understanding of an idea like that under the kind of circumstances that you're confronted with? And my assumption as a civilian and a person that's never been subjected or been able to or willing to subject myself to the kind of processes that I've heard are necessary to become a Navy SEAL or a member of the SAS. But once you've gone through that level of sort of the discipline, submission, personal expertise and excellence, that you can then still have because even as a normal citizen, it's pretty hard to sort of carry in your head, oh, me owning this phone means that somewhere in the Congo a kid is mining cobalt or whatever. I find it hard to hold those ideas in my head. I imagine that operating at that level, it's difficult to maintain those ideas. And I wonder if firstly, what level of loyalty do you still feel to the organization that you long served and presumably have many, many friends and people you love still in that service? What kind of loyalty do you still feel to them? And were you ever confronted? Can you, I mean, imagine there's things you literally can't talk about, but can you generally talk about if you've ever been confronted in that type of way while in service?
So, first of all, we know when you talk about the training that you go through, one of the things that happen when you go through that training is you learn a lot about yourself. And I would say it strengthens your character. It doesn't weaken your character. It doesn't erode your character to go through rigorous training. It actually strengthens your character. So, a person that's been through rigorous training is going to be more apt to hold the line in what their beliefs are and what their values are. So, I think most people now look, could you take someone that's maybe weak-minded and they become brainwashed to a point where they're just obeying orders and that's that? Yeah, that could happen. But usually when people join the military and they go through some time of military training, their character gets strengthened, their beliefs become strengthened, and they're more likely to stand up when something happens or something that they don't believe in is going to occur. They're more likely to say, no, we're not doing this. As far as my loyalty, I was in the SEAL teams for 20 years. My loyalty is very high to the SEAL teams. I love the SEAL teams. The SEAL teams was a great place for me to grow up. And I have all of my friends were people that were other SEALs, and we have a strong bond. And I know that those guys, I've got a bunch of friends that if I called right now, they'd be over at my house in 20 minutes or 2 hours, however long it took them to get there, without even asking me what I need them for. They would just be here. And that's a pretty awesome thing. So I have a high loyalty to the SEAL teams and to the men in the SEAL teams. Does this mean that I think that the SEAL teams is infallible? No, absolutely not. Does it mean that every human, every person, every man inside the SEAL teams is a good person? No, it doesn't mean that at all. Does it mean that the SEAL teams doesn't make mistakes? No, it doesn't mean that at all. So there's a good dichotomy between the loyalty that I have to the SEAL teams and also the questioning of the leadership and the authority and the rules and the regulations. So again, we talked about this last time. I'm a rebellious person. I've always been a rebellious person. And I think that's one of the reasons I was able to be successful, because when things didn't make sense, I would raise my hand and say, that doesn't make sense and we're not going to do that. And for an example of that, I wrote about this in one of my books. We were ordered when I was in Ramadi in 2006, a very tough battle, very determined insurgents, a lot of violence, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of casualties, a lot of sacrifice. And we were ordered in this city that every operation that we had to go on, we had to take Iraqi soldiers with us, friendly Iraqi soldiers with us. And they actually gave us a ratio of how many Iraqi soldiers we had to take with us for every American that we had. And we didn't have enough Iraqi soldiers to make it so that we could bring enough SEALs in the field. So to explain this a little bit more detail, what we were told was for every one American that we took in the field, we had to take 7 Iraqi soldiers with us. The Iraqi soldiers were untrained, they were unmotivated, they were poorly equipped. They didn't speak English. A lot of them couldn't read or write. So they were very low-level soldiers. To call them soldiers even is a stretch. And yet my senior leadership ordered us to take 7 Iraqi soldiers for every one American. The Iraqi units that we were working with only had 15 soldiers, maybe 20 soldiers, maybe 12 soldiers, which meant I would only be able to take 1 or 2, maybe 3 SEALs out in the field. And now you've got SEALs in the field without backup, without their fellow SEALs with them. Maybe they don't have a medic SEAL because the medic stayed back. Maybe they don't have a radioman SEAL because the radioman SEAL stayed back. So you've only got 2 SEALs. 2 SEALs is not a complete unit. And so when I got ordered to do this, I assessed the order that we were given. I didn't make sense. It was going to put my guys at risk. It was going to put the Iraqis at risk as well. And I pushed back up the chain of command and said to my boss, hey, sir, this doesn't make sense. Here's why. Here's the minimum people I would like to be able to take with me to make sure that my guys are safe. I want to take a minimum of 6 people on every operation. And my boss read my assessment and then said, yeah, that makes sense, Jocko. Thank you for informing me of what it was like on the ground there, and take however many people you want. So occasionally things like this happen that don't make sense. And when it does, then you push back and adjustments get made.
Watch entire episodes on demand for free at rumble.com/Russell Brand.